Hello, my name is Grace Kisa. This is my exhibition titled The Sky Was Never the Limit. Using sculpture, painting, and installation, I explore the intersection between African astronomical traditions and the endless possibilities of modern digital technologies as a way to understand both ancient and modern perspectives on the cosmos. The exhibition was at the Emma Darnell Aviation Museum and Conference Center in Atlanta and was curated by Tisha Smith with the generous support from Fulton County Arts and Culture. Ahead is the artist-curator conversation between me, the artist Grace Kisa, and Tisha Smith that took place on June 7th, 2025.
The sky was never the limit. Grace is an interdisciplinary artist, and when I asked her would she be ready to or willing to do this exhibition, she welcomed it with open arms, and I'm so grateful to you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Grace Kisa.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody coming out on a Saturday morning with Atlanta traffic to make it to this art talk. I appreciate it.
You've been working.
I have.
You have been working,
I have.
and it shows. I mean, we had such a short turnaround on this. So what happened was the artist that I was going to show during the calendar that was, arranged and scheduled couldn't. So she came in right away, filled the void, but it gave you less than 6 months to prepare for this exhibition.
It was about 2 months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 2 months.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So everything that you see in there was done in that period.
But except for the body of work that came from Italy.
Yes.
So the large installation I think that was exhibited at Venice and then came back. So that helped me and gave me the start to build out that body of work.
So that was built around that body.
Yes, the continuation of that. After that, Karina, Saber, and I did a small exhibition at Gallery 72, and that was the second step of what we had shown in Venice. So both of those bodies are in there, and then the new work, the 16 pieces that I did after that were continuation of that body of work.
Are you looking to expand this body further beyond what we're seeing now?
I would, because there's still so much to talk about when you're talking about planets, time travel, how we refashion ourselves in the future, how we insert ourselves in the future from the present, using technology, how we use it to define ourselves and our spaces and the spaces beyond this plane. It can go in so many different directions and continue. So that's not even the complete story, because it's just the start. Yeah.
So this exhibition explores the intersection of African astronomy and digital networks. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to the moment or experience that inspired you to bring these two seamlessly distant worlds together in your work?
The premise of starting with the African astronomy is because we are not taught that in conventional Western education. I went to school in Fairfax County, Virginia. I never heard of African astronomy. So when I would see, science shows, astronomers, all kinds of scientists, they were always Eurocentric. And I know that if man started on the continent in East Africa, I was going to find where the oldest thing that in my country, in Kenya, there's an old astronomical site called Naramotunga, which is about 3,000 BC, has been carbon dated as that. And it's kind of like a Stonehenge, but it's 16 pillars that have been made out of basalt stone. And it's where the ancient Africans mapped the skies and created the 365-day calendar. So that was the start of my quest for more information about our contribution to the canon of astronomy and science.
That's phenomenal. And how long did you say that?
The site is 3,000. It's been dated as 3,000 BC, but they say it might be older.
So are any of the figures still
Oh, the
erected?
stones are still there. They're still there.
Wow.
Yeah, they have worn down, but they still exist. They're still there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Your practice spans from sculpture, painting, installations, printmaking, and photography. I mean, you delve in it all. How do you determine which medium best conveys the message or feeling of this particular body of work?
Because my passion right now is in the 3D mixed media, assemblage and sculpture, that's where my focus is first. So I first try to figure out what mediums I'm going to start with. I start out with found metal pieces. They're welded together, and then I build them out using fiber, textiles, different odds and ends, things that have been discarded at yard sales, Goodwill, and then make them start to work together to create a dialogue of what I'm trying to depict. So it's open to anything. So I think because of it's limitless. That's where my interest lies. And then trying to make it make sense is where the challenge of engineering that statement using those materials.
So looking at your work in there and knowing the short period of time that you had to create this body of work, I mean, your craftsmanship is impeccable. So how do you identify what piece goes with what? Because if you're doing found objects, it's an object before it becomes a part of a whole thing. How do you determine what object goes with what piece? Is it like a spiritual draw? Is it an intuitive?
Yeah, it's all of that. It's improvisational, so I don't draw it out ahead of time. I will have a pile of metal pieces and just start putting them together to see what language, what's coming out of it. Is it interesting? So it's based on the form, not necessarily what it was used for. So even if it's stuff from Home Depot or hardware stores, it doesn't matter what it was used for, what's intended for. I'm looking at the form and how that form works with another form to illustrate the energy that I'm going for, and then go from there. So I'll be working on maybe 6 or 7 pieces at the same time. And I might take parts off of this piece and put them with that piece, or take that combination and add it to the first one to see where the interest lies. And then as it goes on, I know, okay, this is ready to be welded together. And then I will weld probably 6 of them together all at once, and then work to build on those 6 pieces. So I'll cast the resin heads and hands based on the structures that have been built. Yeah.
So they're not prefabricated, like laid out. Everything is kind of come to life the same way human form comes to life.
So the frame is every aspect of the frame, even though it is created somewhere else, is formed in one piece. And then I will cast the heads and hands that go with each piece. Because if I do cast a whole bunch of heads and hands, it becomes a waste, because sometimes they don't fit with what I'm creating.
That's kind of contradicted to how you put these pieces together, because they're objects first.
Yes.
So you're finding found objects. So for you not to cast the heads and the hands as an object, but it's almost personality to what the piece is. So it goes beyond an object at that moment. So it's very intentional.
Very much so.
So whereas the other things, you draw to the object to create intention.
And even that is intentional. The finding of the thing is intentional.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are cages that I've had for 10, 15 years. I was interested in the form, but I didn't know how they were going to be used. So I just held on to it until the idea came to me, and I was like, maybe I wasn't even ready to create those pieces, but I knew they were interesting enough that I was going to keep them until I could get to the stage where I could see what I was going to use them for.
Let's talk about the forging process. I'm kind of going off script with my questions, but as we're having this dialogue, I'm very interested in the forging of these objects. Like, what's your forging day?
It's just
like?
it is just it's like tack welding.
Okay.
pieces together. So it's not forged, it's not melted down a metal. It's tack welded, so spot welded where the two pieces interact with each other, just to solidly join them together and then build from there.
But maybe I shouldn't have used the word forged because it is a technical term to artistic process. You're scavenging, let's say.
Oh, okay. Yes.
How do you go about the process of pulling these things? You said 10, 15 years.
Yes.
And it's probably, if we had to put years to
Yes.
those objects that's in there,
Right.
it's maybe, I'm sure probably as old as I and you and
Right,
know,
some of them are.
Some of them
Some
maybe
of them
even
are.
older.
Yeah,
you know?
because people have discarded them, so
That's
I don't
right.
know
So
what they were
it's
used
no
for.
telling how long they had it
Yes.
before
Yeah.
it got on the shelf at the Goodwill.
Yeah. So I'm kind of a hoarder, but with intention. So I will hoard, but then there's a
That's
point
called
where
a collector.
a collector.
This is a difference.
But I will, yes, yeah. But I will hoard it until I'm ready to use it.
Okay.
There's also a point where I stop going out to look for things because my pile is too big. And so I want to be able to take the bins out, lay the stuff out that I need, pick out the things that I want to use. If the pile is so big, I won't be able to see what was behind there. So I want to use what I have before I go out to continue to add new things.
Do you ever, like, once you lay out the structures, do you ever look at something after it's been put together, thinking that looks better over there, I'm going to take it off and put it over there? Or do
No,
you
I
kind of
don't.
let it live?
No, I let it live. Because I can do something else with other things.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we had our studio visit, one of my favorite pieces in the show is holding a porcelain cup with resin over poured,
Yes.
leftover resin in it that hardened. And when I saw it, I was drawn to it. It was sitting on her kitchen counter, and I was drawn to it because it reminded me of stained water from cleaning off your paintbrush. And I have a Goodwill cup, that's a teacup, that I will wash off my paintbrushes at home when I'm cleaning. I was like, oh, this is, you could see like the mica floating around, the pigment, and it was hardened, but it was beautiful. And I was like, I picked it up, I was like, girl, what you gonna do with this? What is this?
Right.
And she was like, oh, it'll go in something. I just, I poured my overpour of resin here, and it'll go into something. And when that something came in here, I was, because I didn't expect to see it in that way so immediate.
Yes.
How soon do you know that this is for that? You get what I'm saying?
There's not a time limit. It just because it is improvisational and it happens. That cup, I had done the piece and I knew I wanted something in the hand. So because I have all these different items, when I put the cup in the palm, of course sitting up, it's like, okay, it says one thing. But when I turned it on the side, it stabilized it. It followed the curve of the palm, and it looked like it was showing you a world or a cosmos. And so it said that to me, and that's why I used that particular thing. Because I even thought of suspending it from the fingers using fishing line, but I liked the way it was sitting in the palm.
It's almost like the metaphor of pouring out of the self into another existence. For me,
I like it.
With the celestial looking blue, the tone of it, the cup laying on the side, perfectly embraced, and it's not broken. No, it's not broken at all. So the overpour doesn't necessarily come from a broken space.
Not at all.
Or was an error, but almost like an offering.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
And it leads from part of my process for making the heads and hands. And not wasting the resin, because I could have just left it in the cup that I was pouring it out of and thrown it away. But I love that. First of all, it's expensive, and so let me just save it and use it in another way.
Right. Okay. We're gonna go to the next form question I have: transmission or transformation and constant, or intriguing installation titles.
Mm-hmm.
Can you unpack the meaning behind those series and how they connect to the show's central theme?
Okay. So transmission transformation is the installation on the back with the three pieces on the wall and the five small statues on the floor. There you go. That was the body of work that I sent to Venice, and it was about the transmission of information from the ancestral plane to how that is transformed through time. So I have three central figures on the wall. On the right, I have Sun Ra represented and Saturn as the star associated with that. Sun Ra was a jazz musician and philosopher who decided to sit out the Second World War and was jailed for it. When he got out of jail, he reimagined himself as an angel from Saturn. So that was how I have transcended the story from the Egyptian cosmos to almost present day, or through time. So the second figure, which is the central figure, I call that piece Flight Travels Fast by Word of Mouth, and it's supposed to honor Harriet Tubman. And I used a Sonia Sanchez poem, or it's actually a haiku and a tanka, and the 16th stanza of it states, picture John Brown meeting her for the first time, shaking her hand, and greeting her with General Tubman, General Tubman, General Tubman. So those three sets of hands are the three handshakes from the general meeting John Brown. That is the North Star represented. And another way of the ancestral figures on the floor are communicating with how people have, seen the stars and created their own story. So I loved that story because the quantum leap that it takes to go from an enslaved person to a general that frees 750 people, it's something out of a science fiction movie, but it's actually real. And that's how the astronomy and the stars played in that story. The third figure is based on the Dogon in Mali and Burkina Faso. And they have an interesting story where they learned or told French not astronomers, they were archaeologists. So they told them about Sirius B, which is the second part of the Sirius complex, the Sirius star, which was not, we couldn't see it with the naked eye at the time, and there were no telescopes that could see it, but they pinpointed exactly where it was, how it revolves in an ellipse. They charted that in their traditional dances, the ellipse of that star, and it wasn't until maybe the 1970s where a telescope was made strong enough that we could see the Sirius B, and it was exactly where they said it was. So people are wondering, well, how does a primitive tribe know about this without the telescope? And they said the story that the Nomos from Sirius brought them that knowledge and told them where they came from. So the Nomos are supposed to be an amphibious being that travels the universe and told them that this is where they came from. So those are the three ancestral figures that I have on the wall. The figures that have transformed ancestral knowledge on the wall, and the figures on the ground represent the Egyptian goddess Nut, who's the goddess of the sky. And those are her 5 children, Horus, Set, Isis, Nephis, and Osiris. And so I had them grounded because that's the beginning. And I have them in an arc, they represent their mother. And they're in communication with those figures through time, and that's the transmission, the transformation of information.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's hard to conceive the fact that this is improvisation, because it's so thoughtful and so intentional. Is there such a thing as intentional proverb?
It is, the intention comes in the research. The improvisation comes in the expression. So the expression of those ideas that I have researched and strung into a story because I'm trying to tell how Africa is always in communication with the stars, how African astronomers through time have charted the skies and how they've used that information to navigate, to create things like GPS. There's an African American woman scientist who created GPS.
Yeah.
There's an African, an African American scientist who worked at NASA who created the transoceanic cable that keeps people communicating across the Atlantic. So Africa and the West is in communication because of these cables. And these are African American scientists that have done these things. So this is another way of the transmission and the connection. So I always have the connection with Africa and the diaspora.
That leads me perfectly to the next question. It's a wonderful segue. Your upbringing spans several countries across Africa and U.S., Kenya, Ethiopia, Botswana, and Virginia. How does these layered cultural experience inform the visual language of this exhibition? And I think you kind of answered it already.
Yes.
But let's revisit that from that thought perspective.
From the perspective of like a childhood spent in transit, and they have a term for it, which is third culture kids. So you create a culture outside of where your parents are from. So your parents may be Kenyan and having a Kenyan experience, but their children are Kenyan growing up in Ethiopia, Botswana, McLean, Virginia. And but the thing with that is, in Kenya, I went to an international nursery school, so there were kids from all over the world. When you see the photograph, you wouldn't know where that picture was taken. In Ethiopia, I went to an American international school. The population was from all over the world. You wouldn't know where that school was. So those perspectives of living in different places and people from all over the world were cross-pollinating and educating each other. So it gives you the flexibility to move in many different circles with ease because it's familiar to you. It's never, that group of people is different from me because we always lived with everybody. That same thing, I think, also translates in the materials that I use and the way I express myself through different mediums. So for me, it looks like, it sounds like speaking in a different language. So if I'm multilingual and I'm only relegated to speaking English, I'm only going to do this kind of work. If I'm multilingual, I can do everything in any medium, and still it'll sound like me. It'll look like me, whatever me is, because that changes with the environment and changes with who I'm talking to. And it's not a code switch. It's actually like a multilingual. You're able to adapt, and you're able to able to acclimatize to any situation. And so a lot of times we third culture kids find home in other third culture kids. We've all had the same experience. Military kids, kids who were diplomats, kids who lived in the foreign service. Because we've had that same experience, no matter what countries we lived in, it was as you get there and you learn, you're observant because of your environment. You're observant because you're trying to figure it out, how you can adapt and acclimatize to that situation. And it makes you more flexible, and it's easier to transition, to make it in that place or to become part of that community.
That kind of speaks to your persona as a individual a lot to me now, understanding that you're so, just cool, laid back, not to be pushed over by no means, but you, like you mentioned, you're able to adapt, you assess and you bring adaptation from your perspective to that.
Right.
I've never experienced a time where I was in a room where you forced yourself to be in a space. You always just fit, and that was a beautiful thing to me, so gracefully.
Right.
And that I was immediately drawn, and I am drawn to individuals like that because it's almost a work of art to be able to do that when it's among a lot of chaos. And in the art industry, there can be often chaos in a
There
room,
is, right.
because you have so many different artistic mediums, challenging and
Personalities.
right, personalities and everything. So to have that persona for yourself is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I've always admired it. Now I
Right.
understand it better.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that African astronomy is a living practice. In what ways do you see your artwork participating in or reviving that tradition in a contemporary, perhaps even futuristic way?
Through the work, I would like people to, if I'm highlighting African astronomers, African American scientists, African scientists, I'm trying to impel you to go and find more. Because when the first question I asked was, okay, I wonder what we call that. I wonder what we call Orion's belt. And of course, there are, in Kenya alone, there are 42 different tribes. There are 42 different ways of saying Orion's belt. So it led me into the quest for, let me find our scientists. Where are our biologists? Where are our psychologists? I would want people to then also question, when you come there and I've given you a little appetizer, you can go and look for more. Not just that, but they're African science fiction movies. African American science fiction movies that people don't ever think about. A lot of them are independent. You can find that. You can find African American and African literature that is science fiction. There are outstanding writers that you can discover, and some of those writers are influenced in the work that I've chosen. So I had Sonia Sanchez that I referenced in the first piece. There are fables like the Anansi and Kuya, who are the string theory pieces is related to. Octavia Butler with the piece with the house in the middle. That's what influences that piece. And then I have a piece on the side with 3 heads, and it's called The Sisterhood. It's based on 3 African American women writers in the 1970s that started their own group: Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, and Tozake Shange. So I have African American literature written into those works. That's what feeds or informs some of this work.
And allows the tradition to live on.
To live on. And then also it's an invitation for people to go and discover.
Absolutely.
Go and discover. Go and read Octavia Butler and the brilliance of that woman.
Yes.
Go and read Tananarive and the list goes on and on and on. I forgot, there's one woman who wrote the book, Children of Blood and Bone. Go and read. I mean, there's so much beautiful literature, movies, music, science, astronomy that you can discover through the African and African American lens.
I love how you've pulled on that too. Like you mentioned Sun Ra, and you're paying homage to these artists through your work, which is alignment with their work.
Yes.
And I think that's a wonderful way in your own voice of paying homage to the experience and allowing the tradition to live on.
Right.
And a wonderful segue and to people to encourage them to read further, like those artists that and novelists that you've mentioned.
Right.
I'm now going to go back and pick up my Octavia Butler book that I'm reading.
And if you don't like to read, you can listen to it on
audio.
Right. So while you're doing whatever you're doing, you can listen to it.
Absolutely.
In fact, it was Michelle who introduced me to Octavia Butler and Tananarive. I was working on your library, and you were like, you need to read these books. And that's what started my reading of their books, was Michelle's library.
What's your favorite Octavia Butler book? Can you
I'll say Earthseed. Oh, Parable of the Sower.
That's the one I'm reading now.
Yeah.
And we just recently, not too long ago, came into the day that maybe back in September of last year, I want to say, came into the day that she opens the book up.
Yes.
And she wrote that so long ago.
Right.
And the day has come to pass. And to look at society of now.
Yes.
And what she had written.
Yes.
We're not far
right,
off
that's
of that
Afrofuturist.
at
Yes.
all, right?
Yes.
So like your work, hers too was very futuristic, to highlight the experience from an African American scope. Wow.
Yes.
So you've exhibited internationally. Congratulations
Thank
to you
you.
for that, including the Venice Biennial. How does showing your work at a community-based venue like the Emma Darnell Aviation Museum and Conference Center change or influence the presentation of your intentions?
In showing in the Emma Darnell Aviation Museum, first of all, is a privilege for me, an honor,
Thank you.
because it's also in a community that would never, or most likely wouldn't be able to have a chance to see my work. So it's for both of us, an opportunity for me to share my work with the community and for my community to experience it and share in it. What was the second part of the question?
The second part was, how does showing your work at a community-based venue like Emma Darnell change or influence the presentation of your intentions?
In the presentation, in Venice, I had a small 14 by 14 foot room, so it was more constricted. It was had the room painted dark gray because I wanted to mimic the night sky. In this space, it had room to breathe, so it could spread out. You could see the arch, the way I had laid it out this time. So the layout is different. I added the rocks to ground, so I was able to play more because I had more space.
Yeah.
So I could add in more medium and make it a different kind of installation. So it is spread out, it has more room to breathe. You get to walk up and you can see more than one person can fit in the room, because that room was really small in Italy. But here it's more open, and you can experience it a different way.
So as an artist, as the artist for that, with that into consideration,
Yeah.
do you think it shows better in an intimate setting or in the larger scale setting? Like, what's your preference?
There's no preference. It was just it's like looking at two different pieces of work in two different rooms.
It's almost like that. What was the phrase you said? Being a third.
A third culture kid. Yes.
It's almost
Yes.
like a third culture kid
Yeah,
experience.
right. You have adapted to the environment that you're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Both of them look beautiful in a different way.
Okay.
I do like the larger space that I could expand. I could expand on the idea, because in the first exhibition, the 5 pieces were sitting on low pedestals, but here grounded. And adding the rocks on it added another element.
You also added light.
Oh, we had, yes.
That,
Maurice added some lighting underneath.
Maurice added the light,
Yeah.
so it emulates a glow.
Yeah, onto the rocks.
Which almost, to me, imply an elevation
Like they were
of
yeah.
like a
Yes.
spaceship or
Yeah.
an aircraft or
Yeah.
something lifting off of ground.
That's
so
exactly
they're not
right.
necessarily grounded per se.
Yes, but they're hovering.
They're hovering,
Yes.
exactly, which is very similar traditionally to the stories that you hear of these beings that came with the information
Yes.
that you are articulating
Yeah.
in this exhibit.
Yes.
Again, improvisation.
Yeah.
That happened
With intention.
With intention,
Yes.
right? Because that happened the day we opened
The day
the show.
yes.
That happened the day
Right.
we opened the show.
We ran and got some rocks from Home
Yeah.
Depot and other craft
Yeah.
stores, and
Yeah.
and put them on. Yeah.
Okay, we are getting to the end of my questioning, and we will open the floor for questions from the audience. But I have 2 more for you. Migration and cultural exchange are reoccurring themes in your work. How do these ideas show up specifically in The Sky Was Never the Limit?
I say that it shows up almost in in the whole installation. So the paintings represent maps and guides. If you've been at the Atlanta airport, there used to be an announcement on the train that would say the color-coded maps and signs will lead you to where you want to go. So that's where my color-coded maps are on the wall. My ancestral figures in that image, I have 2 ancestral figures on the ground, and they, of course, represent the continent and the knowledge that is started with that. So on the piece on the far left, which is your right, I have a coded language that's burned into those wooden pieces. So it's kind of like a Morse code or like a 0-1 that you would do in computers now, but I've done my own symbols, symbology. And then I have the maps on the wall, and then I have the rocket in the middle that's supposed to, based on Andre 3000's lyrics about spaceships not having rearview mirrors. That's the title of that piece. So I have the whole connection also on this wall, where the ancestral figures, the maps of the sky, and the rocket, the spaceship that is taking people on a journey.
I love this exhibition even more so now, having this conversation with you. Is this something that you would like to travel in its totality, like take on to other, and all the way down to the installations, like not leaving anything out and even expanding upon it?
Yes.
How big do you think this could get?
I don't. Again, there are no limits.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's right. The sky was never the limit, right?
It depends on the room, the space, and the space will dictate how big and wide and tall it can be.
Nice.
Yeah, I would add music to it. Yeah. I would add scents to it.
Yeah.
But definitely music to it. Yeah. We did have a soundtrack.
Yeah, we did
done
have
by Maurice. Yeah.
Yeah, Maurice did create a playlist.
Yes.
For the opening.
Yeah.
So again, all intention there.
Yes.
The music that aligned with the figures and the exhibition and everything was phenomenal. We could share that playlist too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, next to the last. What role does methodology or cosmology play in your creative process? And are there particular stories or constellations that influence any of the works in this show? I know you mentioned a couple.
Yes.
Are there any others that weren't mentioned?
I did say the 3 sisters.
Yes.
The sisterhood piece, the 3 sisters of Orion's belt. They align with the pyramids in Giza. Let me see if there's another constellation. The string theory piece, that is Anansi, the spider from Ghana. Yes, the Ghanaian cosmology. So I'm always interested in, Africans are really creative with the stories that they tell, and then I'm always discovering new stories based on the culture, new ways of looking at the world based on the orientation of that culture. And it's endless. So there's so many stories that you can articulate in so many different ways using all these mediums and materials.
What was your favorite story to develop in this body?
My favorite story to develop in this body was the transmission transformation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It was a lot of research, good research, a lot of fun ways of now trying to make, just like the process of creating, trying to make connections between how am I going to articulate transmission and transformation of material and information. How am I going to include the ancestral through time? Because the present can be wide and deep. It's not today or this second. The present could be the past 50 years, the past 100 years. Humans have been on the earth for 100 million years, I think. And so through time, what I've illustrated is just a dot, if that.
Yeah. All right, this is the last question, then we'll open the floor for the audience. If viewers leave with one core message or emotional experience after seeing this exhibition, I don't know, I'll probably be biased when I answer this, but what do you hope they will leave with? What do you hope that will be? I cannot
dictate to somebody coming to see the work what they should come away with, because I can't imagine everyone's experience and how they're going to interpret everything in there. I've just given a guideline of this is what inspired me to create this, and then you participate as well and put in what you get away from it. And then what you would want to do is learn more. Your curiosity is piqued, and you go and scratch that itch, learn more about anything and everything, because there's so much out there. There's so much we all can learn from each other, and definitely from Africa and Africa's breadth of knowledge that most people don't know anything about or don't know that it even exists. But how can it not exist when you can see the pyramids, or you can see and there are many pyramids. There are pyramids in Egypt, in Sudan, in Zimbabwe, some which are even older, in northern Kenya. So if you start with all those different places and then go from there, it's limitless.
The sky was never the
Was
limit.
never the limit, yeah.
Wonderful.
And the same for this side of the Atlantic, because there are pyramids here in Georgia. There is knowledge here all over the United States that most people don't know about. Women's contribution to science, Black people's contribution to science, the contemporary sciences, all of them.
Yes.
So all of that needs to, you can search for it. And it's really easy to find. You can Google it.
Yes.
Really easy. You just ask AI the question. Who
I know,
are,
right?
what
That
is,
comes up
and they can
with-
give you at least a skeleton of it, and then you can go deeper. It's just a nugget. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace, so much for your creativity,
Yeah.
for your knowledge, your wisdom,
Thank you.
your intention, your improvisation, all of the things that are of you. I appreciate you blessing us with this opportunity to be able to have this experience and share this with you. Is this the first time outside of, I think you said maybe a small portion of it, but this has been shown?
Yeah, this is the first
since you
time.
Come from
Yeah.
Italy?
Yeah, and it was just that part was from Italy.
Yeah.
The rest of it has been done right here,
Wow.
and all of it has never been seen like this.
What
Yeah.
an honor.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I appreciate you.
The honor is mine, really,
Wow.
really. Thank you
You're welcome.
for giving me this opportunity
You're
to show this
welcome.
work.
This is
And
just the
challenging me
beginning.
to fill that room, because at first I was
I
like,
know, right?
I was like, it's a big room, Tisha.
She
Yeah.
sure did. She was
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm gonna say yes.
Yes,
And then she hung
yes.
up the phone.
Right,
got it
right.
to
And
work.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I figured
yeah.
it out. We
Mhm.
did some check-ins, studio
Yes,
visit,
yes.
and you definitely figured it out,
Yeah,
sis.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We will open the floor